The Deathworlders. Unity Core Station hovered in a stable orbit around the gas giant Cerellian Prime, its shining panels casting a golden hue against the void. Inside its Grand Council chamber, 42 species gathered, their delegates perched, floating, or rooted in their respective habitat pods. The air was sterile, the tone was diplomatic. The tension was anything but. A low chime echoed. "The Council recognizes Electharn of the Trinari Union," said the chair being, a transparent jelly form barely visible in its containment field. Electharn rose on his spindly stalks, bioluminescent spots along his thorax glowing an anxious blue. "Fellow delegates, once again, I submit that Earth, the human homeworld, remains a risk to the equilibrium of the Galactic Accord. Their biological aggression, their military expansionism, their obsession with survival is why we're still here," came a calm voice from the human seat. All heads turned. Commander Mara Voss stood slowly, her posture rigid, her earthborn presence unsettling to many in the room. She wore no formal robe, just the dark gray uniform of Terran strategic defense, functional, minimalist, and intimidating in its honesty. "With respect, Councillor Tharn," Mara continued, "every time your species panics, it's because we're willing to face what you won't." Elix's glow dimmed. "This isn't about panic, Commander. It's about prevention. And humans are incapable of restraint." Mara didn't flinch. "You say that as a Scourge-class anomaly consumes outer systems. And the only species offering to investigate is mine." A silence settled. The hologram in the center of the chamber displayed a growing region of space, the Scourge Zone, where entire planets had gone dark. No radiation spikes. No debris fields. Just gone. One delegate, a soft-bodied Frenari elder, pulsed nervously. "You wish to approach that anomaly?" "Correct," Mara said. "We've launched recon drones. Zero data. But one of our old colony ships, Argona Prime, was caught near the edge of the zone. It hasn't fully vanished. We believe it's in partial stasis, possibly shielded." "Suicide," muttered another. "Possibly," Mara said. "But better that than watching helplessly." Electharn flared red. "You enjoy risk. You chase it like a predator. We cannot allow you to endanger the Accord. We're not asking permission." That silenced the chamber. Mara's hand hovered briefly over her wrist display. "Earth has activated Directive Echo 9. A few alien delegates hissed in alarm. That directive hadn't been heard since Earth joined the Accord. Elix's voice trembled. "That's Ascension Protocol. It was banned." "Suspended," Mara corrected. "Until now." The chamber erupted. Species that barely shared biology shouted in dozens of overlapping languages. The chair being shimmered urgently, pulsing a universal calming frequency through the room. In the eye of the storm, Mara remained still. Her fingers brushed the embedded scar behind her right ear. That old, cold tingle. She hadn't felt it in 6 years. Ascension Protocol was awake. 2 decks below Unity's main floor, Mara entered the sealed comms room. Her face, moments ago a mask of calm, now bore the faint edge of unease. The secure line pinged. "Voss," said the voice on the screen. "Admiral Osei, Earth High Command." His face was older than she remembered, drawn thin by too many hours and not enough victories. "We're proceeding?" she asked. "We don't have a choice," Osei said. "The Scourge is accelerating. And you saw what's left of Sector 9. Mara nodded grimly. "Is Aegis 9 operational?" "Reactivating now. Half the systems are still cold. Some of the old implants may not sync. And the candidates, they're scattered. Retired. Some broken. Get them back." Mara hesitated. "It cost us everything last time." "I know." They were silent a moment. Finally, Osei spoke softly. "You're not just leading this mission, Mara. You are the mission. You were always the proof of concept." Mara looked away. The walls of the room, cold steel and humming circuits, felt smaller than they used to. "I'll bring them in," she said. "And Mara, sir, don't come back unchanged. This time, we may need you more than human." The screen blinked off. Mara stood there in the dark, alone with the ghosts of a past humanity was never meant to revisit. Outside, in the cold void, the Scourge continued to spread. Ascension Protocol. The Aegis 9 facility didn't exist on any official Terran map. Buried beneath the Antarctic ice shelf, it had been carved into the rock over 2 decades ago, when the first whispers of human post-biological evolution had started to surface. It was meant to be the crucible for humanity's next phase. It had nearly become its tomb. Mara stepped through the decontamination seal and into the dim corridor. The lights overhead flickered. Power was only partially restored. The recycled air smelled of ozone and oil. Memories hit her all at once. Pain, screaming, bone-deep cold. The sound of her own heartbeat after her nervous system was first remapped. She was home. Behind her, 2 security officers struggled to carry in a sealed case, long, heavy, and humming faintly. "Place it in Vault A3, she ordered. "And don't open it." They obeyed without question. Everyone on base knew not to mess with Ascension tech. Some of it still dreamed when powered down. She continued down the corridor, her boots echoing. Half the lab was sealed off by now, either from degradation or deliberate lockdown. She passed through a blast door and entered operations control. A familiar voice greeted her. "Well, if it isn't the Iron Ghost herself." Mara turned. Alexei Ward leaned back in his chair, legs propped on a console, eating something that resembled jerky but glowed faintly in the dark. Same cocky smirk. Same half-metal face. His cybernetics had aged, but he wore them like a second skin. "You're not dead," she said, stepping forward. "Disappointed." "Surprised. Last I heard you were off-grid, somewhere in the Martian belt." "Got bored. The galaxy's getting weird again, and you calling meant something was seriously broken." Mara nodded. "It is." She gestured to the central display and brought up the map. The Scourge zone, now 12 systems deep. Alexei's smile vanished. "That's not a spatial anomaly," he muttered. "That's a rewrite field. Like it's erasing local constants." "Exactly." Mara tapped again and highlighted a point near the edge. "Our ship. Argona Prime. Thought lost. But new long-range imaging picked up a partial energy signature. Minimal activity. Hull still intact." Alexei frowned. "And you think it survived the field somehow?" "I think it encountered something, and lived long enough to tell us how." His eyes narrowed. "You're pulling the team back together." She gave a slow nod. "Already sent recall pings to Okoye and Jen." Alexei raised a brow. "Jen? I thought he went insane." "He did. But he also stabilized 2 months ago. Claims he saw the design beneath the pattern. Whatever that means." Alexei whistled. "Damn. We're really doing this. We have to." Mara moved to the armory panel and keyed in her clearance. The wall slid open with a hiss, revealing her old armor. Black, matte, unnaturally lightweight. Not made for protection. Made for adaptation. It responded to her as if it remembered her touch. A faint ripple passed over its surface. "Ascension Protocol," Alexei said quietly, "wasn't supposed to be reactivated." "We were never supposed to meet anything that made it necessary," Mara replied. Silence passed between them. Alexei stood and approached her. "You know the cost. The neural syncing, the biocycling. You go back in, and there might not be a you left to come out." "I know. And you're doing it anyway." "I have to." He paused, then nodded once. "Then let's do it right." Understand. 2 hours later, Mara stood in the sync chamber, clad in her armor. Electrodes lined her spine. Nanofiber cables slithered along her arms, feeding into the neural lattice buried under her skin. A voice came through the speaker. "Initiating Phase 1. Cortex interface engaged." Mara's vision blurred. Her pulse slowed. Thoughts began to stretch and pull apart, like data through a wormhole. She remembered the first time she did this, how the world shattered and reassembled with terrifying clarity. Alexei's voice filtered in. "Don't fight it. Let it take." The machine didn't just read her, it rewrote her. Every instinct was stripped and reforged. She was no longer a soldier. She was an interface. A blade honed by recursion and will. Her breathing slowed. A heartbeat. Another. And then silence. Inside that stillness, she saw the Scourge not as chaos, but as structure. It wasn't an enemy. It was a test. When her eyes opened again, her pupils had turned silver. She was ready. Into the void. The dropship shuddered as it crossed the Scourge threshold. From the outside, the zone looked like a wall of blurred space, stars bent, colors warped, and nothing inside obeyed the usual laws of physics. But once the ship broke through, everything went deathly still. Commander Mara Voss stood at the viewport, helmet off, her silver eyes scanning the abyss. They were in. Behind her, Naira Okoye checked equipment straps while murmuring diagnostics to herself. Her skin shimmered slightly, bioreactive armor grafted directly into her cells. Her enhancements had never been as flashy as Alexei's, but she could survive vacuum, toxins, even neural EMPs. "You feel that?" Naira asked, frowning. Mara nodded. "Like the universe is holding its breath." The third member of the team, Alexei Ward, was at the helm, adjusting trajectory. "We're on track. Argona Prime is 22 clicks out. Gravity is weird. Pulling sideways." They flew in silence for a moment, each of them processing what they were seeing. Out here, the stars looked melted. Entire constellations flowed like oil across the sky. A gas giant twisted in on itself like a Mobius strip. And floating ahead, untouched by whatever force was rewriting the rules, was their target. Argona Prime. The lost colony ship. It was a beast of a vessel, older than most of the Council's generation ships, its hull scarred but intact. It had no power signature, no radio signal, no thermal bleed. It should have been dead. But it wasn't. The dropship latched onto a docking ring with a clunk, and a moment later, the airlock hissed open. Mara was first through. Inside was a nightmare. The ship's corridors were intact, but the walls were veined with a material that pulsed faintly, metal and flesh intertwined. Lights flickered in irregular patterns, as though reacting to their movements. Okoye knelt near one of the walls. "This isn't corrosion. It's adaptation. Organometallic." Alexei guessed. "No. It's alive." They pressed deeper into the ship. Gravity fluctuated slightly as they moved, but the deeper they went, the more it stabilized, as if the ship recognized them. Then they found the first body. Or what had been a body. It was fused to the wall, face twisted in awe, not agony. Eyes open, mouth slack. Its veins pulsed with something not entirely human. Mara stepped closer. Her neural implant pinged unexpectedly. Conduit established. Her vision blurred. For a split second, she was the man, feeling, seeing, experiencing his last moments. He had not died in fear. He had transcended. She staggered back, gasping. "Talk to me," Alexei said, stepping beside her. "They didn't die," Mara whispered. "They changed." As they moved toward the central core, more signs emerged. Crew uniforms merged into bulkheads, personal logs looping nonsensically, strange glyphs etched into the floors. Then they heard it. A voice, not over speakers, not audible. It was inside their heads. Soft, measured, and deeply alien. "Welcome. You are late." Weapons came up instantly. "Identify," Mara ordered. From the far end of the chamber, a figure stepped into view. At first glance, it looked human. Male. Tall. Bald. Skin faintly iridescent, like it reflected multiple versions of itself. But his eyes were no longer eyes. They were stars. Twin motes of infinite depth. "I was Elias Venn," the figure said. "Commander of Argona Prime. But I am more now." Mara stared, heart pounding. "You're alive." "Yes. And not alone." He gestured around him. "This ship is no longer just a machine. It's a chrysalis. And we have seen beyond." "Seen what?" Okoye asked warily. Venn tilted his head. "The Scourge. That's your name for it. You think it's erasure. Death. But it is transition. A test. Every few million years, this galaxy is challenged. Species must ascend, or perish. It is the only way entropy is overcome. Mara stepped forward. You think we're meant to become, what? Post-organic. No, Ven said. Not post-organic. Post-limitation. Your protocol was close. You are the edge of the blade. But you must go deeper. He looked directly at her, and Mara felt the weight of a billion thoughts behind his gaze. You are humanity's last chance to pass the threshold. I have kept the field from consuming this ship, so I could deliver this warning. The Scourge doesn't hunt. It evaluates. You must finish what you began. Complete ascension. The lights dimmed. A tremor rolled through the hull. Alexei's eyes went wide. We've got movement outside. Field spike, Okoye confirmed, glancing at her wrist display. It's starting to rewrite again. Mara looked at Ven. Can you stop it? I've done all I can, he said. Now it's up to you. He stepped backward, and vanished in a ripple of light. The team bolted for the dropship as space around them began to stutter. Walls bent, time looped in on itself. Their path flickered. Reality twisted like it couldn't remember what it was supposed to be. But the Ascendants didn't flinch. They adapted. Threshold. The dropship shuddered as Mara, Alexei, and Okoye broke free from Argona Prime. Outside, the Scourge field had begun to shift, no longer quiet, no longer passive. Space itself churned like a living sea, folding and unraveling across dimensions too deep for comprehension. Back on Unity Core, the field had looked like a storm. Now, inside it, it felt like judgment. Alexei fought with the controls. Gravity vectors looping. Our inertial dampeners are 3 seconds behind real space. We keep flying like this, we'll skip out of time. Recalibrate on Ven's coordinates, Mara said calmly. He didn't give us coordinates. He didn't have to. Mara's voice was distant. Her eyes were closed, silver flickering under the lids. I can see the pattern now. Alexei glanced over. You're sinking. I'm not just sinking, she whispered. I'm aligning. He didn't like the sound of that. But he trusted her. They all did. Okoye, he said. Feed her direct access. Okoye hesitated for only a moment. Then she patched Mara into the ship's neural interface. Lights flickered. Consoles dimmed. And Mara took over. Inside her mind, Mara no longer felt bound to bone or skin. She moved across energy lattices, through data feeds, into the ship's core as if it were her own body. And beyond that, into the Scourge. Not as an enemy. Not as a victim. As an invited guest. She understood now. The Scourge wasn't a weapon. It was a system. An old one. Galactic-scale intelligence seeded eons ago. Waiting. Testing. It presented itself as destruction because destruction was the only teacher life ever truly listened to. Most civilizations failed. Humanity, despite all odds, might not. She reached deeper. The pattern solidified. The dropship breached the veil of distortion and entered a still zone. Ahead, a structure, vast, angular, almost like a cathedral of starlight. It floated unmoored from time, pulsing softly like the heart of a sleeping god. They had found the interface gate. It's not built by humans, Okoye breathed. Or any council race, Alexei added. This thing predates everything. Mara's eyes opened. It's the test site. They landed on a shimmering platform of light. The material underfoot had no texture, no heat, no weight. And yet, it held them like stone. In the center, a monolith stood. 12 meters tall, perfectly smooth. Covered in glowing glyphs that shifted depending on who looked at them. Mara approached it slowly. It wants you, Okoye said softly. I know. She placed her palm on the monolith. The world vanished. She stood in a space that wasn't space, shapes without substance, color without light. A presence greeted her. Not in words, but concepts. You carry the will to ascend. You are incomplete. Do you choose to finish the pattern? She thought of Earth, scarred, stubborn, vibrant. Of every war fought, every mistake made, every impossible thing survived. They weren't perfect, but they adapted. They endured. She answered without hesitation, yes. From the dropship, Alexei and Okoye watched in stunned silence. The monolith opened. Not with machinery, but like a flower, petals of energy unfolding. Mara stood at its center, suspended, lifted into the air, bathed in light that sang without sound. Her body began to change. Not tearing. Not pain. Transformation. Her armor melted into her skin. Circuits rewrote. Neural pathways grew brighter, denser. Her thoughts fractured and reassembled into new dimensions. She saw history. Possibility. She became interface. Ascension wasn't about power. It was about capacity. And she now had enough to guide a species. When the process ended, Mara floated gently back to the platform. She opened her eyes. No longer silver. Now white, alive with galaxies. Alexei exhaled. So, what now? She looked at them both, and when she spoke, her voice was her own, and something more. Now we take the message back. Okoye blinked. You communicated with it? No, Mara said. We became compatible. She turned to face the stars. The Scourge isn't ending. It's beginning a new phase. The others will follow. They'll try. Some will fail. Some will evolve. And us? Alexei asked. We were always meant to lead, she said softly. Her implants pulsed once, new ones, more subtle than before. A soft hum lingered in the air. And Earth? Okoye asked. Mara smiled. They're going to need time. But they'll catch up. As the dropship lifted away from the monolith, the Scourge field began to recede, across sectors, across systems. Not vanishing. Just waiting. For those ready to face it next.